This spring and summer, I've got my son's graduation party, a bridal shower to plan, and a few summer birthdays for my family. But hosting can feel so overwhelming. Pretty Little Gatherings offers decor kits and tablescapes that are intentionally designed and handmade so everything works together. No second guessing, and definitely no running around to various stores to purchase what you need. Just open the box and host your celebration. Visit prettylittlegathering.com and subscribe to their newsletter for updates on their spring and summer decor options. And definitely follow them on social media platforms. Jane Golden and Mural Arts basically go hand in hand. What started out as a job working for a small city-run arts program for youth has led Golden into a career advocating for creatives in the city and for our homes, businesses, and even bridges to reflect the beauty within. As the founding director of Mural Arts Philadelphia, Golden transformed Philly into the mural capital of the world. And this is her last year heading the organization. Golden announced her retirement, so I had to sit down with her to talk about 42 years of being Philly's art champion. It's Thursday, March 12th. I'm Trenae Ray, and here's my one-on-one with Jane Golden. Philadelphia, 1984. Former Philly Mayor Wilson Goode, the city's first Black mayor, hires you to address a pervasive issue in the city, and that was graffiti. And at the time, graffiti wasn't celebrated. It was considered blight, and it was everywhere. It was visible on buildings and buses and down in the subways. Graffiti would get cleaned up, and then you would see it again. So the city takes a major step, and it decides to address graffiti by creating the Philadelphia Anti-Graffiti Network. You are a Stanford graduate, you leave California, and you move to Philly. And Mayor Goode hires you to run a component of the Philadelphia Anti-Graffiti Network, an art program for youth. Jane, why did you say yes?
Actually, there was no way I was going to say no. I was like, I want this job, like with all my heart and soul. And I actually did not know Philly very well. I was diagnosed with lupus when I was in LA, came back east to be with my family. I was coming up to Philly to go to Hahnemann Hospital at the time. They had a really good lupus doctor. And I was reading about Philly had their first Black mayor. There were all these articles on graffiti. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's a social epidemic. It's never going away. But the mayor is going to do something about it. And in one of the articles, it said he was going to have an art component as part of what he was doing. And he was going to work with graffiti writers to try to reduce graffiti. So I was like, oh my God, that could be my job. You know, I would love this. And so I wrote the mayor, said I'd be honored to work in his administration. I didn't think anyone would ever call me or anything. It was a mayor. But then his head of arts and culture did call me. And it was about 2 weeks after I sent my letter. And it was so exciting. And he said, oh, it's such a coincidence. I know your boss in LA. And I was like, oh, you do? And his name is Oliver Franklin. He was the head of arts and culture for Mayor Goode. And he goes, yeah, I called her about you. And I was like, ooh, I could feel my spine stiffen because I'm sort of a pest. I wear people out. I'm very tenacious.
Okay.
So I said, oh, what'd she say? And she said, I'm going to tell you two things about Jane Golden. Number one, she's going to drive you crazy. She's the most tenacious person I've ever met. She'll wear you out. And number two, you should absolutely hire her. I was like, phew. So I went up. I had this interview. Yeah, right. Exactly. And I met Tim Spencer, at the time, the head of Anti-Graffiti. And yeah, I walked in this room and there were a million kids and community organizers. And I'm like, I want to be here. And so Tim said, look, if you want this job, you can have it. Your pay will be $12,500 a year. You can't have a desk. I don't know why that was, but I'm very flexible. And he said, you're going to rechannel the negative energy of graffiti writers to something positive. Like, it was sort of like good luck. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. I didn't really know Philly. I didn't know graffiti writers. I didn't know much. I was like an anthropologist studying like a whole new thing. And so I signed up immediately. And then I started meeting graffiti writers. I thought I have to talk to graffiti writers, otherwise I won't know what to do. And why are they writing on walls? And then I met block captains and community leaders. And I worked with community organizers who just gave me the best the best sort of advice about what, when you go into a community, you don't have answers, go in with questions, be humble, be grateful. It's not your home. And I just, from the minute I signed up, I like fell in love with that body of work.
So you met with Philadelphians, you got to hang out with the children and the block captains and the communities. You built relationships with Philadelphians. How did they receive you, this woman from California?
First, like the kids were like, "Are you a cop?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm an artist." And the city gave me this undercover police car that was totally dented. And when you beeped the horn, the trunk flew open. It was so mysterious. And then eventually they gave us a decommissioned ambulance too, which was super fun. But in the beginning, there was like, first, the kids were like, "What? You're like a white person from New Jersey who spent time in California." But here's the thing. Our area of mutuality was our common love of art. And I thought these guys, because they're mostly young men, would be great muralists because, first of all, they're good wall hunters. They don't mind heights. And they work outside. And they love art. I'm like, we're sort of alike. And we like formed this bond. The other thing is, because I had lupus had scarred my face. I felt very much like I felt in my life, I had a very privileged life, but then I felt like, because I was told I wouldn't live very long, I suddenly was like an outsider, and I felt like my whole life had shifted. And the kids, they felt like they were sort of outsiders. We were outside the system, and we all sort of were functioning outside the public art world system, which was so effete. And we together form this bond. It didn't happen immediately because there was skepticism. Some of the kids were like, I'm only going to work with spray. I'm not going to work with a brush. I don't want to work for the man, the mayor. But I was like, look, everybody, you can get paid to paint, to do art. Like, I can't teach you how to use spray paint. You're all good at that. But you could learn other things. You're 15, you're 16. Some of them had dropped out of high school. I'm like, where are you going to be when you're 25? And they were like, we're going to be famous, like Keith Haring. And I'm like, look, only a handful of artists are going to be able to make it on their own in America. It's just the sad truth of the arts. Learn everything so that you can be resilient. And, when graffiti art is in, you're good. If it's not in, you're good. And so they were like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, and it's a job. And there was enough money that young people could come in as volunteers, then get paid, then get an increase, and then eventually go into a full-time job. I mean, there were summers when we had 3,000 young people painting murals, 3,000. Wow. And people got paid well, and hundreds of kids working year-round. So we formed this bond around our love of art, and together we decided we're going to do murals. I showed them pictures of murals in LA, San Francisco, and Chicago. I'm like, look, we can do this in Philly. And they showed me pictures in art magazines of artists that they loved. And I'm like, look, we'll go to the Museum of Modern Art. We'll go to the Metropolitan Museum. We are going to meet Philly artists that look like you. We're going to do it all. And I realized you're only as good as your word. And so I started going 100 miles an hour. I worked with a couple of teachers who had left the school district. We worked together. Mm-hmm. And then we had a lot of young people. And we formed, it was the core of this group. We were just called the Art Unit. We didn't really have a name or anything. Our office was at City Hall Annex. We had an art room. And we had all these supplies. And then we started running programs all over the city. At the museum, we had programs as well. Tons of young people every Saturday morning coming to the museum. It was fantastic. It was like the world opened up. And we did it together. And then we started working with community leaders and block captains to do murals. And at first people were like, oh my God, we don't want art. We want jobs. We want housing. And we were like, look at these murals in LA. Look at them in San Francisco. We could do this here. What do you want? And you know what people said? People said to us, no one ever asked us what we want. Things are done to us or not done. And the only visual stimulation here are billboards advertising alcohol and tobacco. And we were like, this can change. And then we flew into action to make it change.
So as you were hearing people respond to your questions of, what do you want for your neighborhood? And they're saying housing and, other quality of life things. Mm-hmm. Is there a connection though? Does art help reach that better quality of life?
Yes. One of the most inspiring things is I feel like I've been a witness to the power of art. And I don't say that lightly or with hyperbole. I mean it. We saw people go from being on the sidelines to being deeply involved in the creation of a 3-story work of art. Not that they were on the scaffolding painting it, but they helped drive the vision of it. Mm-hmm. And so people were able to witness sort of these areas that felt to them oppressive. It was blight. They felt graffiti was just everywhere and that it wasn't really going away, and that these lots had trash. Like, people had felt neglected by the city, rightfully so. And they felt like, I am so tired of people knocking on our door, talking about what can happen, and then nothing ever happening. And so for us to sort of listen to people and say, okay, let's talk about memory, about history, about neighborhood heroes, about young people who were heroic to you. And then we took that information and then we started doing these 3-story works of art. It was like revolutionary. It was like people said, I go to the museum. If I go to the museum, I don't see anybody that looks like me. Suddenly on my block, down the street, around the corner, there is beauty, and beauty is powerful. And so suddenly people felt like, wait a minute, that lot that looks like terrible, we're going to mobilize and we want Philadelphia Green to come in. We actually would like other city services. And our little unit, we would be like, because we were on the ground, we were up on the scaffolding. People were like, we want to get hold of L&I or the streets department. We would call the streets commissioner and we'd say, at 20th and Diamond, there's a pothole that needs fixing. And my former boss was always saying, are you all calling commissioners? And we'd be like, yes, guilty as charged. We're doing that. And people would be like, what? You're artists? And we would say, we are. But we were like, dun, dun, dun. And it was like me and all these kids and these other teachers. And we felt like we're just like we're putting art to work. But here's the thing. We were all working together. So there was always a degree of mutuality instead of this being top down. Like, it was unthinkable. It was unthinkable then, unthinkable today, to do work that wasn't created from a collaborative process, that you bring together the artists in the community. And in that spirit of partnership, great things can happen. So the murals became a sign that people cared, that things could change, and that government could be effective because it was tangible, and good things can be contagious. And that is what we saw. The murals became a beacon.
What was the first mural?
Well, the first mural he did was super exciting. It was the Spring Garden Bridge. And it's really long. It's like 6 feet tall, and probably each side is hundreds of feet long. And it connects the Art Museum area to Mantua and Powelton. Mm-hmm. And it was covered with graffiti. There wasn't a spot on it. So actually, my job was not, when I was hired, it wasn't yet a full-time job. And Wilson Good said to me, if you can paint that bridge with the kids in Mantua in 3 weeks, because I think somebody very famous was coming to the city. I think it was Jesse Jackson. In fact, I know it was. And so if you can do this, you will have a full-time job. No questions asked. So I said, we are doing this. So I met with the crew.
Is 3 weeks a long time?
No, 3 weeks is like nothing. It's nothing. It was just
really? Okay,
okay. Yeah. We were like, okay. So then I met the crew from Mantua, and it was like tons of kids. And we had a shopping cart, and we kept the paint at a rec center, which the shopping cart would occasionally fall over and cause green paint to be in the street, which was a big emergency. And then we cleaned it up. And then we decided with the kids, they wanted to do life in the city, like their life. So it was like a lot of young people doing things, and they were working so fast that the other artists, like, we could barely keep up with them. And we painted at night. We had flashlights. We painted on the weekend. I had a friend who was running a catering company, and he would bring us lunch. And and it was like,
this is a community effort for sure.
It was such a community, and people were driving by going, thank you. The news teams came, everybody came. It was super exciting. And then there was this big dedication at the end, and Wilson Good looked at me. He goes, you did it. Under 3 weeks, he goes, you have the job. And it was like, we had bonded. And like, I'm in touch with some of those young people still, like, as adults. Like, I know their kids. I know, like, it was such a bonding experience, but also the outpouring of support for our work. It was like wonderful. And then we did Richard Allen Housing Project. And then we did the Black Family Reunion mural at 40th and Parkside. Yay, it's still there. Because the Black Family Reunion, the family reunions would always happen every summer in the park. And again, we had to do that project. And like, for some reason, it was odd. We always had these deadlines that we met because we were so driven and excited and inspired.
What was the reaction when the Black Family Reunion mural goes up?
it was very moving. People would stop and bring us pictures, old pictures that they had, and pictures from their family reunions. I mean, I can't, it was almost like people were so surprised. It was like, who are you people? What are you doing? This is amazing. And it was such an extraordinary outpouring of support. There was no like, we don't want this. It was more like, how do we get this in our neighborhood? And after a few years, we had a waiting list of people who wanted work. And I really think that it's because the art spoke to people in a very deep and profound way. And, some years back, a group of city council people from Atlanta came on a mural tour. And the head of their city council said to me, Jane, when we looked at the murals, I almost wanted to weep. And I said, why? And she said, because they look like the people who live here. And I said, isn't that the case in other cities? And she said, I don't think it is. We've been to many other cities. And sometimes people just are tourists. The artists come in from out of town, do something, and then they leave. And there's no real resonance or connection. And that, I think, we have over 4,400 works of public art today. And people think about it like as the autobiography of the city of Philadelphia, because people are sort of controlling and writing their own narratives. It's really intertwined with the people who are here instead of top down.
More with Jane Golden after the break.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Jane, when did you feel, or do you even feel, that you are a Philadelphian?
I felt I was a Philadelphian after a few years of working for Anti-Graffiti, because we were everywhere across the city. We were at 7th and Dauphin. We were at 55th and Woodland. We were at 5th and Tasker. I mean, we were just everywhere. And I felt like, because I was working for city government, I loved being a city employee with all my heart. I felt like this is, not a job. It's like a moral imperative. And we were on a mission. There's no doubt about it. Me, Dietrich Adonis, who sort of co-ran the program, and all the young people together. And so I very felt like I'm a Philadelphian and I couldn't be prouder. I love the neighborhoods. I loved all the people. I love the fact that I saw Philly as a brilliant quilt of all these defined sections that were all singing, all had beauty, and together made something really extraordinary. It's the city we call home.
It sounds like the city, rolled out this red carpet and the city was yours. But what types of challenges did you face? How did you overcome it? And what lessons did you learn?
Well, I would say the red carpet was choppy because, first of all, it took time to build trust with the graffiti writers, and it took a while to bond with block captains. Really, what made it happen was the work. The work had to happen. Like, people had to see proof of concept. They just couldn't, this was not going to be a leap of faith that we just trust them. So that took time. And it was a humbling experience, because every neighborhood was different and we had to really listen deeply and be really respectful. And the harder thing, there were a number of things that were really challenging. And one was the public art people in the city were deeply unfriendly, almost hostile to us. And that was a blow. I mean, people would say to me, "You're not doing public art." And I would say, let me just get this straight. We're in public doing art, so how are we not doing public art? And they would say, what you're doing, Jane Golden, is social work. And they would say it with like a lemon in their mouth. So it was quite pejorative. And I would say to the kids, hold your heads up. We are doing public art. But I had to reflect on, why are they saying this? Because the work wasn't sophisticated enough, because the history of muralism is one that is really sort of revolutionary. If you think about, the 1960s when, Black and brown artists in Chicago painted murals called the Wall of Respect about identity and representation because they couldn't show in galleries or museums. Same with LA. The person who hired me is a well-known Chicano artist. And she was speaking truth to power. She was just incredible in LA. Like, she did amazing, and still does amazing murals. She's like 80 something, still painting. I'm like, yay, Judy Baca. But that was very hard. It was like a blow to our collective ego that we were so out of that system, because the way public art was, it was like you had sculpture, and that was real public art. And then you had murals, and murals were less than. And so I never expected that at all. And yet that's what I encountered. And that was very hard. And years later, I felt vindicated in many different ways. And then I think I had to deal with the challenge of not like a lot of resources, and that anti-graffiti was essentially a cleanup program. It wasn't an art program. So often we had to justify and defend our doing art, and that we needed support for the arts to flourish within this organization. So it was constantly a challenge. And when I talk about the high points, it's the work, it's being out there in the community, it's being on the scaffolding, it's all the conversations with people across the city. And the work with young people, I was like the most amazing thing ever.
I want to kind of dissect that comment that person told you, that your work was social work. In some aspects, I mean, you are talking with the community. You are connecting young people to access to art and opportunities and paid opportunities. If you don't define that as social work, what is that work that you're doing? How would you define that?
Well, actually, today, I would define it differently than I did back then.
Okay.
I think then I was looking for us to be appreciated by the public art world. We were looking for that validation. I'm not anymore. Now, as Mural Arts, I actually think we're a program that embraces nuance. People have asked me for years, because we have all these different departments. Are you a public safety organization? Is it education? Is it social services? Is it art? What is it? And I would say it's all those things, with art at the center. And I think it's okay to be that way. I think that art is lots of things. I've come to see it there's the product, and then there's the process of creation. And then there's the process of you pull it apart and you mine all it has to offer. And then you bring other people into this civic arena. And there's all different impacts. There's the impact on the community. There's the impact on our restorative justice, people, our art education kids that range in age from 11 to 18. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody, it's like thousands of people every year are being impacted, are playing a role, are giving back, are creating. I think back then, even though truly anti-graffiti, we were multitasking, it was, I was looking at it in a more singular way. And it wasn't until we became Mural Arts, and probably under Mayor John Street, when we became part of the Division of Social Services in the Managing Director's office, that I was like, oh, art has power in ways I hadn't suspected. And we can actually mine it for more than we've been doing. And it's this remarkable period of time, because there were like leaders in the city who believed in us, who opened the doors for us to do more.
So catch me up in the timeline. The Anti-Graffiti Network closes in like 96, is that right?
Yeah, 96. And
Okay.
I was going to go to law school. So I applied to law school. I get into law school. My brother's a lawyer, and he says, I don't think you want to go to law school. You should run an art program for the city. I said, there isn't one. He said, well, go start one. And so I went to see Ed Rendell, And I asked
Mayor
him
Ed Rendell at the time.
Mayor Ed Rendell. And I asked Mayor Rendell if he would consider creating a community-based public art program based on our work at the Anti-Graffiti Network, because he was restructuring Anti-Graffiti. So, because Tim Spencer had passed away, the founder and leader of Anti-Graffiti. So he agreed. And then he said, where would you like to be? And we had done research, and we said the Department of Recreation, because Mike DeBerardinis, this person I deeply admire, was the new recreation commissioner. This is before Park and Rec merged. And had been a community organizer. And we just felt like this would be a good home for us. And Mayor Rendell agreed. He assigned us to Commissioner DeBerardinis, and sort of the rest is history. Mayor Rendell said, okay, Jane, you're in charge. But I wasn't in charge of much. It was a teeny little budget. But we were a pro-art program suddenly. And that was very exciting to us.
How is that different than the work that you were doing before?
Well, it was different because we decided to open our doors to all kids, not just graffiti writers. We would work with graffiti writers, but we really felt deeply that all kids should have access to art, and we would try to provide access to as many young people as possible. We also really wanted to support more artists, and we wanted to support emerging artists and established artists and everybody in between. And we felt that it was really amazing to have this opportunity at Anti-Graffiti, where murals were a deterrent, and seen as sort of a, something that is opposed to graffiti. But we felt like we could also work with spray artists. We could open our doors and we could use spray. We saw spray as a tool. If you use it legally, it's like using a brush. And so we just could be more open and more creative. And it was different than being with a program called Anti-Graffiti. Even the name felt a little oppressive at times and didn't really indicate, because I saw it more as a youth development program. Honestly, we employed like literally 25,000 kids over time. So I sort of pushed back against that. But it felt sort of liberating to be just a purely an art program. And it felt, because it suddenly, like, I felt potential at Anti-Graffiti. I felt a different kind of potential when we became the Mural Arts program.
I want to talk about the power of this program. It's responsible for bringing more than 4,000 murals to the city. Philly is known as the mural capital of the world, and you did that. The work that you all did, does that give you a sense of pride or joy, or is it something else?
I think that I have ever-present angst, so I tend to be in a state of stress more than not.
Okay.
So I sort of look at like the glass more half empty than full. Like, what else should we be doing? How do we do this better? But yes, I feel tremendously proud of everybody who's helped bring this to life. I, sometimes it's happened quite a bit often, like recently rather, where people stop me and they say they moved to Philly because of the murals. And I'm like, what? Oh, that's so great. Mm-hmm. And, and there's so many people who feel that their lives have been impacted by mural arts. I mean, we employ 250 artists every single year. I mean, it's like been 6,000 artists since, I think we did a count for the New York Times last October, and it was, like 6,000 if we're going back to 96. I just think it's just this huge amount of people. And then our participants, the young people we work with in art education, or the people in the behavioral health program, our Porch Light program, is very inspiring. And then restorative justice, we work in prisons and with people coming home. And there's so many, we started working in the state prison in 2002, and there are so many juvenile lifers who were in the class who got out, and they're doing like one, Luis, he won a Pulitzer Prize. Somebody else is at Harvard for college. Someone is showing with a New York gallery. I could just go on and on and on about where people are. And I think it's, so that makes me feel like, oh my goodness, we've been able to put art to work on behalf of citizens, all citizens. And that is thrilling.
Is the transformation in the creation of the murals or in the experience of looking at it?
I think it's both. I actually think it's three things. It's in the process of creating it and who's creating it and the impact on the people who are creating it. It's the impact on the community as they are part of the creation and have things to say about it. And then when it goes up, then you have a whole other narrative that's about the viewers. I mean, people often tell me, like, oh, I met someone in front of the mural, or I remember we have the series of murals about love that you can see from the
Yes,
L train.
those are like one of my favorites.
Yeah, and people got married on the L train. And it's like sort of amazing, right? And I mean, Quinta Brunson came to Philly last year because we did this great mural that's a tribute to teachers. And she said, oh, I've loved mural art since I was 10. And I'm like, really? And she said, I love the love letter series, just what you said. That's what she said. And so it just, so people have their own, like, sort of their own interpretation and their own sort of reality with that mural that goes sort of transcends mural arts, because the murals are ubiquitous and they're everywhere and they've become part of our lives. They're our friends. They're our neighbors. They become, it's like, someone once said to me, it's intimacy in a public space.
I like that. Well, I think for me, the Steve Powers, for our listeners, we're talking about the Steve Powers 50, A Love Letter for You murals that you could see while you're riding the L in West Philly. And I think what attracted me to these love letters is not just like the colors and like how big they were, but also the language. And it's like I almost could hear someone from Philly talking to me with that language. Like the one is holler and hear my heartbeat. You talked about this connection of like another avenue that murals could connect people to government. And there's other ways that we can connect with government, whether it's like showing up to court or voting or, making our voices heard down in City Hall during city council hearings. But this, like, art is something different. It's something different.
It is. And, we have also artist in residency programs where artists are embedded in departments and they become the bridge, the translator between the public and the work that's going on. I was at a conference about climate science and art. And these scientists who were very esteemed stood up and they said, we feel we have a lot to say, but no one understands us. We have a lot to say, but we need a translator. And that's why we love working with artists. And so art is that. It's what, it's like there are different ways to connect to city government, many interesting ways, right? You can do that. But this is something different and it's evocative and it's moving. It's emotional. Just like what you felt about love letters, it's deep, but it's also, practical. We're doing a mural and someone says, how do I get a hold of L&I? And we can say, oh, this is how, someone, is talking to us about one thing and we can talk about, oh, Clean and Green is doing all these things. Maybe you're interested in the citywide cleanup or the spring cleanup or, we should always be like an ambassador working on behalf of the city. But also I think it's wonderful. And I know I'm biased, but to have an organization that operates on a different plane that's really about representation at its deepest core, sort of as both individuals, but just us collectively as humans. I mean, when Steve Powers came to us with that idea, it was that searching for love and validation. And we went to so many community meetings where he would have a chalkboard and people would write down what do you love? And first, people talked about what they didn't like about the city. We had to get through that. It was like cathartic.
I feel like that's easy.
And then, yeah. And you're like, I don't like this. I don't like.
Yeah.
But then, you know what? But then we got past that. And then people actually, they had a lot to say about what they loved. And he would take a picture of what people said, and then he turned it into art. And wherever he was working, people would inevitably come up and say, can you add that word? Can you add this? Can you do? And he did it. And I just remember thinking, this is like, because we didn't know what this would be. Because when we first came to community meetings, people were like, Jane, we want a mural arts mural. We don't like this whole thing about text. We're not interested. But then this is the thing. They became interested and it became part of West Philly. And all the businesses along that corridor where the Market Street corridor had been shut down for a while. Mm-hmm. So Steve, everything he did, he lifted up and would shine a light on those businesses so that they would get business. And it was just, it was like economic development and the arts. See, I think we are the quintessential multitasker. I think we're always doing a lot of things at the same time. And that is the beauty of art. Is it economic development? Is it beautification? Is it public art making? Is it social services? I mean, at any given moment, I think there are all these different layers, which to me makes it magical and wonderful and inspiring. It's like a feast of riches. I get so excited.
I can tell that's the one thing I do. You're like art. I love that energy. And it also, the love letters, it feels so Philly. And another favorite mural that I have is Common Threads, which is on Spring Garden and Broad Street. It seems like it's so iconic. It's so Philly because it gets used, I feel like, on postcards and a lot of different things. And it depicts young people imitating like the postures of like these historical figures. It's from 1997. Every time I see it, I'm like, I'm home. I'm in Philly. I feel better. Can you describe the process of making that one, if you can recall that one?
Sure, I can. I very vividly recall it. First of all, it's by Meg Seligman, who is a brilliant artist. And I know Meg, she'd worked a little bit at Anti-Graffiti. And when we became Mural Arts, we reconnected. And she said she had this great idea for this wall. And I had seen that wall because I'm like Meg, we're wall hunters. We notice great walls. And if all the people listening to this podcast, if you know a good wall, you really need to just come to Mural Arts. So she showed me this brilliant design. She said she had connected with kids at Ben Franklin High School because I think she was teaching there. And she said, oh, they remind me of my grandmother's figurines. They're just so elegant and beautiful. And I want to do something that connects the past and the present. And so she said, she had very little. She had this one small grant. So I said, well, let's do it together and we'll help in any way we can. And we were such a little organization, but we did. We raised the money as that scaffolding went down. And I remember we got, at the final stretch, we got $10,000 from the Philadelphia Foundation. And it was like the program officer drove up with the check. And I was like, we can finish the wall. And it was, I'm telling you, people were screeching to a halt. That mural has been reproduced in publications around the world. It's been in movies. It's been on television. It's just everywhere. And it is so beautiful and so inspiring. It gives kids the dignity and respect they truly deserve. It's called Common Threads because the lead figure, Tamika, is a poet, and she wrote a poem called Common Threads. And it was so beautiful. Meg is like, oh, we're naming the mural Common Threads. And then we restored it some years ago, like 10 years ago. And everybody in the mural came back for the dedication. It was really lovely. And I just think it's a beacon. And we always worry about someone building in front. And so, we can't stop development, but we want developers to be sensitive to the fact that these murals are civic assets. And as one community leader said in Point Breeze, she said, when murals go away, we see our lives being erased. So it's incumbent upon us as citizens to push back. We can't stop it, but we can ask developers, be sensitive to the mural being there. Can you shift your building? Can you create space for a new mural? Can you contribute to a mural? What can you do? Because Philadelphia is known internationally as the city of murals, and that should never, ever, ever change.
Jane, I want to go over to Parkside again, and there's a mural honoring the Negro League's baseball team, the Philadelphia Stars.
That's right.
Which recently came down. I mean, what is the community supposed to do when they see their mural, like their neighborhood mural, get destroyed because of demolition or construction?
Well, what they can do is first come to us immediately, and then we're going to do detective work and track down the developer. We'll work with city council, and then we're going to go to them and see what they can do to help support something else. And so in that case, the developer is involved with the community group in Parkside, and we're building actually a wall in the Memorial Park across the street where the team actually played, the Philadelphia Stars, and there'll be this wall built. And I think it's happening this spring. And a new mural, I've seen the design, it's lovely, that it was based on that design, same artist. So that mural will come back. It'll look a little different. It's going to be longer rather than as tall, but it will not go away. It is, and I think we're living in a time where erasure is happening and history is under threat, and we have to push back on it. We have to say it is unacceptable, and we all need to be in this. So that's what citizens can do. They can be watchdogs for us. You can let us know. And you can also advocate for mural arts, advocate with your civic leaders, our mayor, our city council, like just remind them, like, we love mural arts. Murals are important. I lived in LA, and when I lived in LA after Stanford, LA was the center of the mural universe. And that city program eventually lost their funding. And that collection for so many years. Murals disappeared, murals got graffiti, no one cared for them. It was like all these iconic images just went away. And I remember in the back of my mind, I thought that will never happen in Philadelphia. We cannot let that happen. So it takes a village to make this work happen, and it takes a village to protect it.
It also takes a very strong leader, and that's you, Jean. So why are you stepping down? Why are you leaving? We had to get to the question. We had to get to the question.
I'll be honest with you. I don't really love it that I'm leaving. I felt like a couple competing things. I think, it's good to make space for the next generation coming up. I've been here a long time. My husband is sort of yearning for me not to work 1,000 hours a week. I feel like, I don't know. I would be disingenuous if I said that it was not complex and not really, really difficult, and that I'm very sad. I think that leaving is probably harder than almost anything I've had to do, and I've had to do a lot of hard things. But I love mural arts, and I want it to survive and thrive, and they will always have my heart. And I have a part-time contract from the board to do some work, so I intend to stay around for a while. And then I'm very devoted to the cultural community, the cultural sector in our city, and I hope I can find ways to support artists.
When you think about the work that you've done with mural arts and just art in Philadelphia and community and civic engagement and restorative justice that you mentioned, it's the 250th anniversary of the founding of this nation. What sorts of things come to your mind? How do you make sense of your identity as a Philadelphian, what Philadelphia is, and what is Philadelphia's future?
It's a great question. I would say that, in this important year, I think what matters is democracy. And I think I'm proud to be in a city where it all started. I'm proud to be in a city that is sort of gritty and rugged in a way and filled with great people and communities. It has a grittiness that I've always loved, always fell in love with it from the very beginning. And we're a program that really embraces that concept of, that we really believe in a democratic process. We believe in consensus. We believe in letting people's voices rise. And I think evidence of that, we see the evidence of it in the collection of public art from one end of the city to the other. And that is really inspiring. And I think it's just, we should all be reminded that democracy is fragile and that it may not be here forever and that we have to work at it. It's like a muscle. We need to not just develop, but we need to sustain. And I feel that fragility probably more now than ever. And so we're doing a lot of work in this last stretch between now and when I leave. I think there'll be 50 new projects happening, and that will be about different aspects of the founding of this country, but it's also not just looking back, it's looking forward. Someone said to me, there's a quote that I really love. I'm going to read it to you. It's right here. And it's about that you row forward looking back, and telling history is part of helping people navigate to the future. We need a litany, a rosary, a sutra, a mantra, a war chest of our victories. The past is set in daylight, and it can become a torch we carry into the night that is the future. And in some way, I think art is that beacon, and we need to hold that torch more than ever as we move forward. And remember that we not only have the capacity to do good work, that we have the bottom line responsibility to do it.
Who said that quote?
It's Rebecca Solnit.
You sounded like You have some heavy, complicated feelings about retiring from Mural Arts.
Mm-hmm.
What's the future of Mural Arts without Jane Golden?
Well, Mural Arts has a wonderful staff. I love them. I really do. In fact, that's one of the reasons I'm so sad, because I love them so much. And they're great. And they are very mission driven, and they will do good work. And there's a search committee, and they'll hire somebody. And I have to believe, I've believed a lot of my life in things happening, working out, that they will hire somebody that will have my values, my work ethic. They'll be different. They won't be me. They'll put their own imprint on the program, and that's good. But I just hope, when I announced I was leaving, a reporter asked me what I wish for the next director, and I wanted to be a person that loves artists, but a person that deeply loves Philadelphia. That is really important, because if they don't, they shouldn't take this job.
Jane Golden, thank you so much for talking with me on CityCast Philly today.
I have loved talking to you. Thank you very much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoyed my conversation with Jane Golden, share this with a friend. Also, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. And don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Philly neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the Friday News Roundup. Talk to you then. Bye.